Welcome to the Content Creator's Guide. This is a place where we expand our knowledge on what it takes to be successful in an ever-expanding world of content creation. Join me as I sit down with individuals sharing their success stories and tips that help them get over the hurdles they faced on their journey to creation success. All right, let's create. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Content Creators Guide. I will be your host, Patrick Conway, also known in other circles as Jaxus. Today, I'm talking to someone who actually got me back into content creation. He may not even know that, but listening to his show, Chad, Fallout 76 Story Podcast, which has well over 600,000 downloads, and his work with the Fallout for Hope Foundation, which is, from what I understand, you created that. Has raised more than $400,000 since December 2020, closing in on $500,000 before the end of the year. That's money for St. Jude's Hospital, the Alzheimer's Association, and Project for Hope, the Ukraine Crisis Global Relief Fund, which was something I was really happy we did something about that. And this man is an inspiration to all who know him. Please give me a warm welcome to a true humanitarian and an overly humble individual, Kenneth Vigue.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having
me. Oops, I was hitting the wrong button there. I don't really beat around the bush. I try to get right into the question. So my first question for you is, what inspired you to get into content creation?
This goes back a long way. If we're going back to the very beginning, I think when I was 4 or 5, I saw an episode of Mr. Wizard's World. Now we're really going back in the time machine here. It was a kids show that had an elderly guy who's like your elementary school science teacher named Don Herbert, and he would always do these kind of wacky science quasi magic experiments. There was one episode that he did that was focused on magic tricks. So I started playing around, pretending to do magic. I got books on magic from the school library, and I started doing magic shows for my family in my living room.
I learned the floating card trick when I was about like 8 years old.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the one with the you cut the hole out of the bottom of a box and make it look like a severed finger.
Yeah.
Catch up on cotton. Yeah, so if we're going back to the beginning, that's kind of where I started. When I was in middle school, I got into theater, doing different plays and musicals. And then at the tail end of high school, we had a pretty successful local access comedy show. That was a variety-based show that ran each week in 8 different towns in northeastern Massachusetts. And that lasted for, I think, a season and a half. And then we'd graduated high school. I worked in some independent film, did a few plays outside Boston, kind of off-Broadway stuff, and then gave it all up. I got defeated with rejection as far as doing anything with film or theater or even writing, creative writing of any kind, getting work published. So I kind of put all that away to focus on career. And it would be almost 20 years before I discovered Fallout 76 as the muse that got me started again in a really unexpected way. Yeah, it wasn't something I counted on. It just kind of happened.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought I was done with writing, and clearly that's not the case.
Thank goodness you found that, because I mean, honestly, your show has been an inspiration for so many other content creators, including myself. I was just kind of trudging through the internet, whatnot, and I had found Fallout 76, and I found this like really interesting element to it. And then I was like, well, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and I just out of the blue typed in Fallout podcasts. And then out of nowhere, here comes this Chad Fallout 76 podcast, and I started listening to it, and I'm like, wow, this is really compelling stuff. And I couldn't stop. I had just kept listening to it. And, through you, I found the Robots Radio Network and got plugged into this huge community. And, I've been off to the races ever since then. But it was really you that started all that for me. And I didn't know if you even knew that, but that's
I
kind of,
I didn't.
yeah.
No,
I
that's
mean, I
awesome.
did radio 20 years ago. I was doing internet radio when it wasn't really a thing, you
Oh,
know,
no way.
and I stopped doing that because I kind of lost my spark. I didn't feel like coming on going, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen," da 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 da, blah, 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 every day. I got kind of tired of doing that because it just got blasé. And then I listened to you, and it just kind of, wow, I could still do this. Maybe I can find a different way to do it where I don't feel so cookie cutter plastic, and then I started doing this show here, started with the Fallout Roundtable with those guys and hanging out with them. And it was so much fun. I'm like, I'm just going to keep creating. I'm just going to find another way to create. And then maybe I can help other people learn how to do it. And that's how I got into this. And it was because of you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's also both ironic and sad that we both had this moment where we gave up something that we kind of loved
Right.
because we couldn't feel like we could do anymore. I
No,
think
it was like a brick wall.
anything with creativity, be it writing, photography, filmmaking, radio, there's a need to be seen and heard inherent in all of us. I think creatively minded people even more so.
I just
And
think we have a certain level of vanity we can't get away from.
I don't even think it's vanity. I think in my case it's just feeling like you have a story to tell and you really want to show someone something, to take them on a journey, to get them to think about something differently, to laugh, to cry, whatever you're trying to do. There's an altruistic attempt at connection beyond speech that is one of the most compelling and complete ways that we can connect with each other as human beings. It's the reason that storytelling as a medium has existed as long as we've had a fire that
Right.
we could gather around. Um, it shapes our memory, the way we see the world. It tells us parables and stories, things to believe in, what not to believe in, and what to be cautious of. I think if you're a creator screaming into a void, heard by none and seen by none, you can only go on so long creating for nothing and no one before it eventually eats you. And I think I got to that point. And then it's not something you lose, I've discovered, because I believed I did. I thought that side of me creatively was dead and buried.
I'm
Um,
completely
it's
with you there. Yeah, I
yeah,
felt
and
the same way.
it's weird. It's like you, as we go through our lives, I think we're very much like an onion, and we grow and change, and we shed skins and pieces of ourselves, and then all of a sudden one day, a knock on the door, and it's a part of you that is very distinctly different from the rest of you that just kind of saunters back into your life and said, let's make something here.
And well,
And you
it's
do.
just that little spark that gets that ember going, and you're like, oh, that fire is still there. You just needed to know that it was still there.
Yeah,
Once
and
that
it's
once that little spark starts, you can't stop it.
and then you're off to the races.
Yeah.
Fallout 76, and I think I've been thinking a lot about why um, I was able to find that again after so long. And I think it was a combination of a few different elements. Fallout 76 in its first year was distinctly different than it is today.
Oh,
It
yes.
had not the easiest launch, um, but for me, it created a unique opportunity, a unique set of ingredients um, as far as creativity goes. For one thing, there was no NPCs, which is very different. I've been playing Fallout since Fallout 3. And in all of the previous games, you have kind of a structured narrative with the choices largely up to you, or the illusion of choice, where we feel like our choices are impacting the world in a specific way. And really, it's a main story branch that kind of all ends up in the same place. You just kind of have different ways of getting there.
Right.
With Fallout 76, it's kind of like, okay, Reclamation Day, head out into the wasteland, and it's just you and other real people, which creates an unscripted, unplanned amount of interaction with other real people, be it positive role play or negative role play, to create your own stories. And I think in the vacuum of a specific story that I was having force fed to me, where you're a particular character on a particular journey. In this one, in Fallout 76, there's a story that you're kind of following, but everything else, the day to day, the side quests are you. It's you creating your own experience. I think it created a sandbox for me to start thinking of the character and what I would do, and then out comes Simon and out comes Chad as characters, and then it just kind of snowballs from there.
Yeah, I mean, other than the overseer's tapes and whatnot that you're following along with, there really isn't a whole lot to go on in 76 until they did bring in the NPCs and they added a little bit more story to it. But from the perspective of what you had nothing but an open slate, and your
Right.
creativity just went wild, and
Yeah.
it's so impressive. I mean, it's I can't say enough about that element to it. When you first started, what was your biggest hurdle getting started? Like doing the podcasting thing? I mean, did you have any experience with podcasting before this or anything like that? And like, what was
None.
the hardest part for you?
Yeah, like I think you in radio probably had more experience than I did.
Probably
Um, I grew up listening to old time radio. Um, I have old time records that I collect. We're talking like Golden Age
like the
of
Lone
radio.
Ranger and the Dark
Oh yeah,
Shadow stuff and all
Golden
that.
Ranger. Yeah, yeah. The gold. God, what is it? Not Dark Shadow. The Shadow. What are some Lights Out? The Whistler.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
a lot of those old school shows are just beautifully composed soundscapes that take you on a
Dick
really
Tracy.
great, yeah, it's
Yeah.
that medium. They mastered this beautiful way of creating vivid visuals through sound alone. And you just kind of sit there and you listen, and you can see the action in your mind's eye with really clever audio. Um, Particularly one person who I really looked up to is Arch Obler, who wrote for Lights Out, who I is largely forgotten today, but some of his work for Lights Out shaped a lot of horror film tropes that came in film and TV after that, that first were born in radio.
Hmm.
Um, really,
Utilizing different elements of sound to create an environmental feel as you're going through the clinking chains and the creaky doors, and
not
that's
even just in sound, but the way in which sound worked together with a script to tell a unique story.
mhm,
Um,
okay.
so when I got started, aside from a love of audio and kind of that sound in my head that I grew up with, I didn't have any background in creating an audio production of any kind. So the story was easy because I'd started writing these journal entries that I was sharing on Reddit that blew up, and hadn't planned on starting anything as far as a podcast or machinima or something. But the community feedback, people were saying you should do something that's like publish a book with these, or tell a story. So Fallout is an owned IP, so you can't just go
Right.
publish a book off their work. But a podcast was doable. So I did the first episode of the podcast as kind of a trial balloon, even see how it would go and see if I could even create something myself. I did, and it blew up. as far as listening goes. Um, and then I just kind of continued on for there with episodes 2 and 3. And then by episode 4, I brought in a full ensemble cast instead of it just being me telling these audio log kind of stories in a
So
first
at
person.
first it wasn't a full on drama. You actually did just like a narrative form.
Yep. Just so I did them as almost like found holotapes.
Okay.
So you pop the holotape into your Pip Boy and you're hearing the story of Simon, who's currently at the end of his story, explaining to you how things happened the way that they did, and why he is dying. So our story kind of starts at the end, and we've been building up to that point ever since.
Yeah, and I've heard it. I just was leading into that. Oh, and by the way, folks, Kenneth is not just a name. He has a face, but apparently his rabbit decided he wanted to chew on some wires today, so we don't get to see his face. Just throwing that out there. Anyway.
Yeah.
So as far as hurdles go, I mean, nothing really got in your way other than the fact you'd never done this before. Did you have any technical issues?
I think the biggest learning curve for me was getting the sound right. I had a vision in my head of how I wanted the show to sound. And it's taken us a little bit to get there. How I envisioned the show sounding was a combination of that kind of fully immersive soundscape experience from old time radio, coupled with a more modern cinematic approach. Because podcasts, I think, aren't for everybody at first. I think a lot of stories, because of how we digest media, you have to have a certain amount of patience to get into a story and really sit down and commit to audio.
Especially without a visual element.
Right. And I think that's for a lot of people is a retooling of your brain a little bit to have something that's audio only. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that for people who had never listened to podcasts before, I had a cinematic immersive sound experience that was so rich you couldn't help but see visual imagery above and beyond just a clanking chain here or a scraping washboard there. I wanted something that was that would feel like they're inside a movie or TV show.
Something immersive, yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of microphones did you choose to use? I mean, obviously at the very beginning you may not have gotten the best of the best, but what do you like for capturing sound from the voice?
Yeah, when I first started, I was on a Blue Yeti, which was still a really good microphone to start with.
That's not a bad one.
If I was going to do it, I was going to do it right. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of season 1, I've upgraded to a Shure SM7B here, which is what I'm on now.
Yeah, that's.
I love this microphone.
I love the Shure. Now, I got the Shure MV7, which is the slight downgrade to the one that you have. And honestly, I can't tell the difference. Yeah, to me,
it has such a beautiful, rich, crispy, full-bodied sound. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's attached via the USB. Is yours XLR?
It is. Yep.
Okay, so there's obviously going to be a difference between the XLR and the USB, but not much. I found that it's actually not too much different.
It seems to work out really well.
Yeah. So speaking of sound and audio, what do you use for editing your show?
Yeah, I use Adobe Audition.
Adobe Audition. Okay.
Yep. I had it already in my suite because we own a marketing company, which has been helpful as far as getting the show out there. But I had Adobe Audition in my suite and started playing around with that. Oh, that reminds me. So as far as the sound that I was going for, it took me a while to get it to sound like how I wanted to. The first episode, and I've polled the fandom on this, people who listen to the show, because I kind of want to go back and remaster the first few because I was still learning.
Mhm.
And to my ear, the sounds I was using were way too large and blown out. Like there's the very first sounds that you hear of Simon walking through grass towards the front door. It sounds like I'm wearing trash bags on my feet.
It's
Like
too
it's that,
crunchy sounding.
yeah, it's too crunchy and loud, and yeah,
Yeah.
that had a very old time radio sound. Like those old time sounds were just so crisp and loud, and almost too over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. Folks, we're going to go ahead and take a mid break here. I'm going to go ahead and say thank you for listening to the show, and thank you for all my Patreon listeners for your support. If you have not and would like to, go ahead and please follow, like, subscribe, and write a review for my show so that I can get noticed by the rest of the internet world. And also, you can send me an email with your comments and questions at ccreatorsguide@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at ccreatorsguide. We'll be right back after this message and a short clip from today's talent.
I'm your host, Maverick Stone.
It's me, Gingerino42.
I'm Romer.
Hey, this is Sassy Lady.
And I'm Jaxus. And we are the Fallout Roundtable. Join us as we explore various topics from the Fallout universe brought from multiple perspectives. We can be found on your favorite podcatchers from Spotify to iTunes. Or follow us on Twitter at FalloutRTB or our email falloutrtb@gmail.com. Be sure to rate, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed the message. We're going to play a little short clip. Kenneth, do you want to go ahead and set up that clip for everybody so they know what's going on?
Yes. All right. So when we first started these, I wanted to have random breaks in the episodes to inject what I think are some of the funniest bits from Fallout. It's those vintage old-time commercials. When Fallout 3 first launched, they did a series of just random teaser clips. The Fat Man Nuclear Tactical Catapult, with this kid just getting this nuclear device. I love the era of the 1950s for the kinds of commercials that they would put out, because they're just so damned endearing. And this was the early era of Madison Avenue. So the tricks and trappings to get us to buy as consumers were not there because they didn't have to be. To get someone to buy a product, it literally just had to be as simple as buy it today because it works. It just works. It was that simple. And it was always done with kind of a wink and a nod. So some of the commercials that we've done, and we've done several of these at this point, take mundane places or objects in Fallout 76 and parody them, sometimes in original ways, other times in direct homage to an iconic commercial. This one is for perfectly preserved pie. So it's the scenario set up in which a typical businessman is coming home talking about the office and the guys at the office, and the wife is talking all about her pie. And there is a really cheeky bit of hilarity in terms of double entendre, which is something that the 50s also does really well. Because the 50s is such an era of innocence, it allows you to kind of dip into that a little bit in a humorous way. This is hands down our most re-listened to section of any episode we've ever done. It's this 1 minute 31 second commercial here.
All right, let's give it a listen.
Honey, I'm home.
I'm in the kitchen, Jim.
Say, what's that amazing aroma?
Why, it's my plump and delicious pie.
Ooh, gee whiz, Susan, that's one moist-looking pie. But what's the occasion?
Well, Jim, lately I've noticed you sneaking next door every time Miss Robbins takes her pie out.
But Susan...
A man should eat pie in his own home, served up piping hot. Here, try this.
Oh, heavenly days, McGee. Look at all those plump and flaky layers. What's your secret?
A lady never talks about her pie, Jim. Just try a bite.
Poor mouthwater taste is incredible. It's just perfect.
Just one juicy bite, and even the neighbors won't stop eating my pie.
Wait till the fellas down at the office hear about this.
I have enough pie for all of them, Jim. Invite them over tomorrow evening. I'll make sure you land that big promotion.
Oh, Susan,
Yes, Jim.
your pie is perfect.
Yes, I know. And ladies, between you and me, the secret is all in the box. Ask your grocer for new perfectly preserved pie mix from Whamco.
Oh, I love the pie references. I just, I like when you can take things that are promiscuous and somewhat like provocative, and you can make it innocent by just changing the way it's presented. And I like the way they do that, to where like your adult can totally understand the other element, and a kid would never even, it wouldn't even cross their mind. And we were so much better at doing things that way back then, because nowadays it's almost like you just throw it in everybody's faces, and it's not as creative.
Yeah, I think we've lost the art of subtlety to a degree, where you can get a laugh and get some humor out of it. This hilarious bit of nonsense is also a perfect example of the kind of story journey I wanted to take people on. Because as much as we are deeply rooted in dark humor, when you think about what makes Fallout what it is a roller coaster ride of complete wacky nonsense with this dark undercurrent. And you're going from laughing to hearing something really brutal to finding, someone who died in a tragic way. That's really what Fallout is. And so in structuring the stories of the podcast, in every episode, I want people to go from, being sad about what's happening to connecting with a character, to laughing, to feel happiness. And I like to take a break from doing a really serious scene and bring people back down again, almost like a roller coaster. So you inject something like this ridiculous pie commercial and you get a little bit of emotional release, and then you come back down, you take people on the story again.
That's what it is for me. That's what I felt so compelled to listen to more, is because I felt like I was constantly going from a high to a low to a high, and just back and forth. And it was in a way that was pleasing. Like it wasn't like abrupt or hard or harsh. It felt like a nice ride, and everything. I like just getting to know all the different characters, and Brian kills me. Just he's so clueless, but
Brian is partly based on a real person.
I believe it. But it's just so interesting how that all works out, and it was just so cool for me. What went through your head when you were coming through with the name for your show?
Well, this is a bit of a funny story. So when I first started writing it, the punchline is Simon just hating this titular Chad character so much. Every episode ended with "fuck Chad," and even in his journals he would say that. And so the first original title of the show was actually that. So the first episode when I dropped it had that as the title, and Apple kicked it back, as obviously that wouldn't fly.
And you're like, okay, how do I figure out a way around this?
Let me reel myself in a little bit, because the original journal entry stories are way more out there than the story I ended up where we are today. So I just dropped it and simply kept it as Chad.
That's sometimes how it works, and that's one of the things about podcasting and things like that. Keeping it simple but stating exactly what you want people to notice. Being a story podcast, it's about Chad, Chad and Simon. So that kept it simple and it was easy to understand. And I don't think anybody was confused by what they were getting into. Now I want to kind of take a little veer here. I want to go more into your charity elements. What was your inspiration for Fallout for Hope?
Yeah, after the show really took off, and Bethesda really started throwing a spotlight on us, I got to know a lot of people in the community that way. A few of the people at different times needed some help. The first situation that came up was Doc C.J. Martin, who's a role player on console. And in the early years, there were some really unusual, kind of unique role players coming out of the community that Bethesda was paying attention to. And Doc CJ role played as a medic. So, in character, he'd be down at Fisher Prime as we're doing Scorched Beast Queen runs. He'd be running around, providing people with medical supplies, administering first aid. So he became really well known in the community just for that, and he never broke character. It was remarkable. In real life, unfortunately, his house caught fire, and in getting his family out to safety, he suffered severe third-degree burns, smoke inhalation. There was a 1950s style, one of those plasticky kind of sun porch deals.
Mm-hmm.
It caught fire, of course, and melted. And so sections of burning plastic coming down on him, not good.
Yeah.
So it was not good. So we got the community together and started a GoFundMe. That went viral with donations pouring in from all over the world, including some by Bethesda employees to help him. So not only did we pay his medical bills, but we also were able to pay for the repair work on his house.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So once that happened, I was just kind of blown away by us being able to rally like that to support someone. During COVID, Wasteland Medic was a streamer and a good friend. She works as a real life first responder. She's a paramedic. And there was this bizarre scenario in which her town, the town planner, there was embezzlement going on.
Ooh.
So because of all of that,
No bueno.
when she got COVID, of course she couldn't work as a paramedic, and there was no funds. She wasn't getting a paycheck either. She was in kind of dire straits. Utilities were being shut off. Her car was about to be repossessed the very next day. So we got the community together again, put together a GoFundMe, and got her car payments caught up and her utilities bills squared away. And once again, it went worldwide. As the end of 2020 started coming around, that was just a really awful year. With the COVID pandemic and the shutdown, feeling disconnected from people, social strife, people arguing. It was a terrible year. And as it started to come to the end, I felt like I was going to the holiday season, just not feeling the holiday season at all. And I wanted to try and, for myself, do something positive so that at least something good came out of a year that was just completely not good.
Bring some light to the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and just feel good going into the start of a new one. Feel some optimism and some hope for the future, and just hope in each other, and even to have faith in each other. Once again, I didn't feel it at all that year. So,
Kind of remember how you were at the beginning of that. You seem to have changed a little bit.
yeah, that year wore on me, like it did a lot of people.
Yeah. You kind of stepped away for a while too. Yeah.
Yeah, I found it really hard to keep up with a regular release schedule during that time.
Yeah.
Because I just wasn't feeling writing. It's hard to get yourself in that mindset. So it was
It's
a
hard
real
to feel
struggle.
inspired when the world's bashing down on everyone.
Yeah, well, when
Yeah,
when
yeah.
everything is going to hell in a handbasket,
Right.
it's hard to sit down and write some dark humor.
Mhm.
So I decided to do it for St. Jude and get together a few people. I say a few people for
There's a few
streaming.
thousand people, but yeah.
Um, to get some people together for St. Jude just to raise some money and help some sick kids at the holidays. I thought St. Jude is something that we've supported privately for years. I love the work that they do, the work that they've done into childhood life-threatening illnesses, the cancer work that they've done.
They've got some of the best leading cancer physicians that work through them in the entire world. And
It
so,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, and the work that they do, they share worldwide. They do not just work here in the United States. They have satellite clinics all over the world, helping kids, saving lives. It's really lovely to see.
Yeah, there's no bias, and it's an incredible foundation. My family's been part of that for ever since I was born. My mother had been donating to them since she was a child. So
Yeah, and even now, a developer at Bethesda, her niece is being treated by St. Jude. So she found out that we were doing this, and she's been all about it this year.
Yeah.
But that first year's, I thought it would be, a handful of people. It ended up being, over 250 people that ended up streaming with us that first year. And it raised over $100,000 in a week and a half.
Yeah, I think the first year I got involved, we did like 300,000, something like that.
No, that's in total.
Oh.
Yeah, that was last year 2, we did I think it was 170,000.
So it came out to 300,000. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was an experience. It felt really good to be part of that in some way. It just feels good. You feel like you're doing something instead of talking about it. A lot of people talk about it. Nobody seems to step up and do something.
And I think that you'd asked me a question earlier, and I think that's the answer that I'm going to give here at the end, because I have a very particular philosophy when it comes to that.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there.
But I didn't think that we'd raise as much as we did. And once we passed the goal and it was the last day, I went live and thanked everybody, and I just completely lost it.
I remember that.
I was an emotional.
I was crying with
mess.
you. I was crying with you, man. I think a lot of us were, because I remember we were in the chat rooms, and you were like there on a live stream with us. And as soon as the waterworks started coming from you, we were all just like, "Oh, he's so great!" And just your humble nature, man, and the way that you communicate with us, we feel like family with you. That's how all of us that I think anyway, it seems like that we all feel like we're kind of connected in a way, like we're just one big family, and we're trying to help everybody we can. And that's the connection I felt with that whole environment. I felt it with hope definitely gives that vibe.
Yeah.
So what is your ultimate goal with your charity work? I know I give all the easy questions.
I think what we started here is important, and I would like for it to continue and endure, even if at some point I don't.
I feel you there. A legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So how hard is it to, now this is not so much for myself, this is a question for our content creators. How hard is it to get into adding charity work to podcasting and streaming? Is it difficult? Is there an easy way to get into it? What do you use?
Sorry, say it again.
So, like, how hard is it to get into adding charity work to podcasting and streaming? Like, like putting the programs in there, the overlays. I mean, is it really hard, or do you just like? I mean, I know we use Tiltify, so
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and I'm going to give you two answers. Firstly, if you're running a podcast and you want to get into charity work, firstly, make sure that you're able to support the show that you're doing first. Um, you need to be able to, I mean, there's a cost to producing podcasts, particularly storytelling podcasts, where you have licensing of sound effects, commissioning of music, you've got advertising and production, and in some cases, if it's for profit and it's not based on an IP like Bethesda's, and it's a story that something original you've done, you're paying voice talent, all of that. So there's a cost to doing all that. Make sure you're able to sustain yourself before you feel comfortable giving back. I think a lot of times we get burned out because we have this need to get involved with charity work, but we don't make sure that we cover ourselves first. And that goes for streamers too. There's a lot of Twitch streamers who do quite a lot of charity work. And, if you're doing that for a job, you need to pay your bills. So as great as it is to do that, make sure that you're in a solid position, regardless of whether you're doing a podcast or you're a streamer, in order to do it. When you're ready, take the time to think about what kind of cause you want to do. If you have a personal stake, a connection in a particular cause, something you feel really passionate about, stick to what you know, stick to what you believe in, because that becomes a part of your personal brand, your story. For instance, there are lots of veterans on stream, who stream on Twitch, on YouTube, content creators that do quite a lot for veterans funds, or they get involved with Toys for Tots. There's a connection there that they feel that's personal. So start there with thinking about what you want to do. Next, try and find like-minded people. If you're a mega streamer, and you have a huge audience, you probably don't need a great many to join you. If you do, it's great. If not, your bigger impact can really have when you start getting people together who are like-minded, who believe in the same cause you do, and just get together, support each other, and have fun doing it. Then you can kind of continue growing it from there, which is really what Fallout for Hope is. Going into it, I wanted to make sure that if we were starting a charity initiative and having a team, it would be something that, regardless of how many followers you have, if you've never streamed for the first time, I want it to be accessible to everyone. And a lot of people who stream with us that first year, even last year, that were streaming for the very first time, now are streaming as proper streamers, and also are doing charity work for other organizations, not just St. Jude, but they're kind of they get some knowledge and build their skill sets here, and then they can go off and do their own thing, which is awesome too.
Build some confidence. Yeah. I mean, because for me, I'm not really a streamer. Mind you, I do go in there and I'll goof off from time to time, but I've never like taken it very seriously because I've got a lot going on. But I do like the element of being able to learn from going through Fallout for Hope. I didn't know how Tiltify worked. I thought it was interesting to go through Fallout for Hope, and you guys even had classes to teach us on how to put our overlays in, and how to set everything up, and made it really easy for us to get there. And I think it's a good stepping stool for anybody that want to do any kind of charity work, is to actually kind of just connect yourself with one of these groups like Fallout for Hope. I'm sure there might be others out there, but that's the one I chose to hook my wagon to, and that's why I'm here. So so you seem to be always adding things to your charity side of what do you plan to do next?
This is it.
Oh, okay. So you're going to stick with like Alzheimer's, St. Jude's, and
Yeah, because It's posed a few problems.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, for one thing, our team size has grown significantly. We're going to end up with almost 600 streamers from 84 countries that joined us this year, which is just a gigantic, huge team, which is amazing. But it becomes a problem in terms of our impact, more causes that we do. Because of the scope and scale of this, we can't do this year round.
Right.
Originally, I had only intended on Fallout for Hope being a once a year thing that we do towards the end of the year, but we kind of ended up branching off. The American Heart Association had reached out to us last year, and we started doing something with them in May, June-ish. And then last year, voice actor Wes Johnson, who I've gotten to know quite a bit personally.
He's a great guy.
Really, yeah, absolutely. He's a real one. Genuine
Yeah,
human being. Incredible voice actor, but just a fantastic person, a great friend and mentor. Had asked me for some help with Voice-a-Palooza that he wanted to do for Alzheimer's. And I was on a break at that point.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me I'm not doing anything right now.
I was totally burned out from last year's Fallout for Hope, and Wes came to me in I think late January and asked me about it. I was like, I can't say no to Wes Johnson.
Right.
So
are we going to stick with the Heart Association's Alzheimer's event and St. Jude, and are we still doing the Ukraine thing, or as long as that's going?
That will expire the end of this year. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll wrap that campaign. We've been running that campaign since February, since it started.
Yeah. Kind of pop back and forth with that one through the other ones. I just keep bringing it back around.
Yeah.
Well, let's see here. Kind of got lost. I'm usually stuck on just major content creation and the technical side of things, but I wanted to make sure we touched heavily on the charity stuff because I think that's very important for people to know and understand how charity works, especially for streamers and, different types of content creators out there. What is a question you think content creators, like new content creators, they fail to ask when they have the opportunity and they're like in front of somebody that is knowledgeable and, really successful in the content creation world? What's a question that they fail to ask, and like what's the answer to that question?
Where do I begin?
Okay. Yeah.
I think I'm in a weird and some people ask this but it doesn't really come up when I have the chance to sit down with someone like you. I think there's a lot of creative people out there, and it's always a struggle to be seen. Whether you're a streamer on Twitch and you're trying to build up your base there, or YouTube, or you're launching a podcast, trying to be seen is a real challenge. Because we started early in Fallout 76 and had that spotlight from Bethesda and Forbes magazine and some few other press articles that really helped get us in terms of awareness going. A lot of people don't ask, what are the things I can do to make me more visible, or for game companies to notice me. I think it comes down to an investment of time. So much of what I do on a day-to-day basis is just talk to people. Get to know people in the community, get to know the people who run communities. No matter what game you're into, there's always like a Reddit community that you can get involved in, or Facebook groups, Discord groups. Start to invest time into your socials and kind of rotate through, making sure that you're not just putting stuff out there, but you're also giving back to people that you can be an asset to, and help them find something or reshare stuff that they're doing. Approaching things humbly can be really good in terms of just being able to form an authentic connection with people. And the more connections with people you form, the more you get to know people, you build friendships, it all becomes a real part of your support structure to help you to get your stuff out there. And the same is true for you. You're helping get their stuff out there. And it's just a group of people supporting each other.
To
And
me, it's about relationships. Yeah.
it is. Yeah. It's all
Yeah.
relationship building.
Yeah.
It can really be helpful. As far as gaming companies go, gaming companies pay attention to the community. Community managers, it's their job to kind of monitor what's going on. So if you're looking for that kind of validation or opportunities, take the time to find out who's in charge of influencers, who's in charge of content creators at that particular company, and then just reach out and introduce yourself, let them know what you do, and also think about ways in which you can help them meet a particular goal. A good example of that is a marketing launch for a DLC or a new game. If you're doing a story that's based in that universe, how can I do, a spin-off or a one-off episode tied to that happens to be riding that launch wave? In
Mhm.
which case, you're creating content that highlights that new game or DLC. And
Yeah.
also, the game company is looking for community created content all the time. So they can say, oh, look, this person has built this crazy camp. Let's share a picture of this in Fallout 76.
Right.
Or they created this really cool story, or their cosplay is ridiculous. You need to see the cosplay they do on stream. Whatever it is that you're doing that's unique and creative, they're on the hunt for that to reshare and show off and all of that.
Create another marketing angle.
Yeah, well, marketing angle, but also it shows engagement. So it shows the kind of cool stuff that the community is doing and the way in which they're appreciating the DLC or the game that they're dropping.
All right. And who do you go to when you have a question about content creation or how to do something?
I go to the professionals who do it for a living. Some of them are community managers for game companies that I bounce questions off of.
So you just reach out through the network that you've created over the years of talking to these game company professionals and things of that nature, huh?
Yeah, well, I think a part of that too, it just comes from career working in corporate. It's all about your network and mentorship. So it's being able to find people who have knowledge and a skill set that you don't have, and then just go learn from them, pick their brain, buy them a coffee, spend some time with them.
Surround yourself with people smarter than yourself. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And become aware of what you lack. Be self-aware enough to admit that you don't have all the answers, you don't have knowledge in a space, and then go find somebody who does, and then add that to your toolkit. And in exchange, they can definitely learn something from you and just pass that around. You can mentor somebody else.
Absolutely. All right. So my final question, what key takeaway would you like the listeners to get from your time here today? I guess it's not my final question, but it's the final one that of actual regular questions.
Take time to give back. And that's true in all things. And giving back is not about you. If it is, you're not giving back. I think a lot of times our motivations in terms of what we require are really specific.
Mm-hmm.
But the best thing about giving back fully is when you do something for someone without expecting to gain anything of it in exchange. And a lot of times you do something, there's a lot of things that I do or have done that I don't talk about because that's not what it's about.
Not looking for the attaboy.
No. And sometimes people will come to me for different things, and I help them out or give them advice, and just be a real person, just looking to help other people out. I think don't feel like you need to compete in that a lot of times, we're competing for attention, or we're competing with ourselves and content creators. I think what stops a lot of networking is you look at people who are doing the same thing you are, and you look at them as the enemy, your competition, or you get jealous if they get something that you didn't.
What a foolish way to look at things, though.
It is, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of that in
Yeah.
this community, and in any community, really.
Mm.
And once you start doing that, you're really competing against yourself.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, it's
You're doing
people,
self a disservice.
people don't like to see that, and when you're complaining, it's kind of a turnoff. So it closes doors for people.
Mhm.
But also, you're never going to be satisfied that way, and you're also limiting yourself from really reaching out to that person and learning from them, and they learning from you. You just take time to give back for as much as you get. Make sure that you're putting time in to do something for somebody else.
It's that pay it forward standard.
Yeah.
So what do you got coming up next, and how can people reach you?
Yeah, so we're closing out season 2 of the show in a huge way. We've got the Battle of Appalachia coming, and now that storyline wise, we've come into Wastelanders, Steel Rain, Steel Dawn. The NPC characters that were introduced in Fallout 76 are becoming part of our story, which is creating some real problems. And many of the original voice actors from Fallout 76 are coming back to voice the characters on the show. Which
I noticed that. That was really awesome.
Really wild about. Because now the production costs of the show are all out of the way for the year. I got that out of the way now. So the latter half of the season, we're doing everything strictly for charity. So we're able to bring in some voice actors to do it for charity, since they're SAG-AFTRA, so they can't really do it otherwise.
Nice. That's a nice little workaround. I like that.
Yeah. So there's stories with a cause. So our season 2 was gonna end with a bang.
That's great. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out my guest's work and keep creating. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye, everybody.
This podcast is part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, a program designed to help all podcasts reach their full potential. For information about joining the Robots Radio Rocket Club, check out robotsradio.net.